The college football offseason is in full swing, and it's time to take a look ahead at the next season, specifically spring practice. While there are teams that are canceling spring games, there are still big questions that need to be answered. We're starting with the AAC. We'll go conference by conference, and we'll take a look at the big question for each team, or at least one big question for each team in that respective conference. We start with the AAC, and there are plenty of questions to be answered. But before we dive into that, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. It goes a long way in helping this channel grow. We are on our way to 10,000 subscribers. That is my goal for the end of the year, and you all make that happen. So subscribe if you're new. Hope you enjoy the content, and let's dive into big questions for the AAC. We start with the Army Black Knights, the defending champs of the AAC, and one of the biggest questions is who replaces Bryson Daly. Honestly, that might be the biggest question. And with these service academies, with the triple option attack that they run, these are teams that typically they have guys that can make things happen. They're maybe not the most gifted compared to other quarterbacks in college football in terms of talent and natural talent, but these are guys that can run offenses really efficiently. Bryson Daly was a perfect example of that. And now they take a look at who's going to replace him. Dwayne Coleman could be one of those guys. Had some experience last year, 121 yards on the ground. And I think that you're looking at a guy who could, 121 through the air. This is a guy who could be potentially the next man up. You also have Cade Helms, who also ran the ball a few times last year for them. So that's definitely something they're going to have to replace. Overall, it's going to be a group effort, offensively, defensively. You trust what Jeff Monken's going to do on both sides of the ball. It's just a matter of finding that right quarterback that is the master of that offense. And Army knows what can go well. You saw it last year when you have the right quarterback. And if it doesn't go well, then obviously you still have plenty of opportunities to be successful. But at the same time, you are going to have a lot more success if you find the right guy in that system. Next, we go up to the Charlotte 49ers. Now, this is a program that has struggled in years past, and now they are bringing in Tim Albin from Ohio to take over. The big question is, can Albin bring that Ohio magic to Charlotte? This is a team that has brought in a ton of transfer portal talent over the last handful of years, and that's really not going to change. They're 14-30 since they made the Bahamas Bowl in 2019. That's 2 regimes ago, and you're looking at a program that, again, has tried to do things through the transfer portal. They've tried to do things through recruiting, and really just nothing seems to be working out. When you're asking what Charlotte can do in this conference, I think that they are in a good position to potentially win some football games that they're not supposed to, and it's going to be fun to see how they make that happen. And Albin brings in some of these transfers that are going to make a big difference. The quarterback position is interesting. You bring in Connor Harrell from North Carolina, Grayson Loftus from Duke. You also get Donald Chaney in the transfer portal, Jaden McGowan, Stellan Bowman joins Albin from Ohio. You have plenty of talent coming in, but it might take some time. And Albin has done a really good job. People doubted him when he took over as Ohio's head coach, and they just won the conference. So this is a team that is definitely in a rebuilding phase, but let's see what Albin can do and see if he can turn things around. He obviously took over a really good program in Ohio. Didn't necessarily have to rebuild it, but he did have to rebuild people's expectations. So can he rebuild a complete roster overhaul? We'll see. ECU is going to be next, and this is a team that a lot of people are really excited for. The big question I have for them is, can Katon Hauser take that next step? This is a guy who was playing really well towards the end of the year, threw for over 2,000 yards, 18 touchdowns. The one thing you'd like to see him do better is limit those turnovers. You'd like to see him throw less interceptions. Very underrated player as a runner, too. 170 yards on the ground, 4 touchdowns. He is someone who is not necessarily looking to run necessarily, but he has the ability to do so. ECU is a team that played really well down the stretch, and a team that is looking to take some of that momentum if they can and put it into the 2025 season. This is a team that wants to compete for an AAC championship, a conference that should be more wide open than it has in years past, and we'll see what happens. They also have new leadership, so we'll see what the first full year of no interim tag looks like for this team, but this is a conference, like I said, that is wide open. Definitely can be one if you're ECU, and definitely attainable for any goal ECU might have. It just is really going to start with the quarterback position, and he has plenty of talent to utilize downfield as well. So we'll see what happens. I think he is a guy to definitely keep an eye on that people aren't talking about a ton so far. FAU is also under new leadership. This seems to be kind of a theme with this conference. Zach Kittley, is he ready for the spotlight? That's probably my biggest question. FAU is in a talent-rich area. There is plenty of opportunity. Lane Kiffin showed exactly how you can win at this program, and Zach Kittley is going to bring a unique offense, and I'm really excited to see what he can do with this team. You bring in a guy like Caden Veldkamp, who is a perfect fit for this offense. You bring in certain players from Western Kentucky that also fit well, and it'll be fun to see how these guys mesh together in this new team. Since Lane Kiffin departed, 22-35 for the Owls. It's not been good. Tom Herman could get the job done. They've had a number of opportunities to be successful, but just haven't been able to make that happen. So we'll see what happens with Kittley running the show, and we'll see if they can take a step forward. The Memphis Tigers are an interesting team because we knew they were coming into last year. We knew they were going to lose a lot of talent. Ryan Silverfield understood that his team would need kind of a starting lineup overhaul, if you will. And the biggest question is this a rebuilding year? I don't think Memphis is treating it like a rebuilding year, but when you lose guys like Seth Hennigan, Mario Anderson, Rock Taylor, Demir Blankenship, Kobe Drake, all are gone on offense. And that's just the offensive side of the ball. You also lose certain players on the defensive side of the ball that could potentially hurt as well. So there's plenty of talent that is leaving, and that's where you ask, is this a rebuilding year? What is the quarterback position going to look like? That's probably a big determining factor, because I think that there's plenty of talent at wide receiver still on Memphis's roster, and they bring in some players from the transfer portal on the offensive side of the ball that could help. Brendan Lewis is taking over at quarterback. We assume maybe AJ Hill, the incoming freshman, is going to take over. We will see. We'll see what the future of Memphis football looks like. And Silverfield has done a really good job so far of winning football games. They obviously want to win the conference next. And like I said before, it's a wide open conference. So we'll see if they can actually do that, or if it's going to take a little bit of time for them to get their footing. Maybe some of the young guys step up and need some time to grow. Navy is up next. Navy is one of those teams that is going to be one of the best in the conference. I think if you're power rating the teams in the AAC, Navy is definitely up there. And the question for them, is this the team to beat? I think when you look at the rosters coming back purely based off talent, you can make a strong argument that Navy is the best team in the AAC. And when you look at what they have coming back offensively, it's easy to see why. That triple option we talked about with Army, that has the ability to be really dangerous if the right guy is running the show, and Blake Horvath is coming back. He also gets a ton of talent coming back around him. Alex Texas is coming back. Eli Heidenreich is also back as well. You have a number of guys who had significant carries for Navy last year are back. Their defense also does not lose a ton, returns a lot of talent, so they should be good again. This is a team that is very much ready to compete for a conference championship, and we've seen, even the Oklahoma game, you could make an argument that Oklahoma's only playing freshmen, sophomores. They did have some upperclassmen, some starters playing, but that was a good win for Navy against some competition that was deemed more talented than them. That was a way to kind of set the stage for 2025. So we'll see if this is the team to beat, but you definitely have a strong argument if you're Navy for that case. And then we go on to North Texas. The big question for North Texas, there's a lot of questions with this team. This is a team that definitely can compete in this conference, but can Reese Poffenbarger take over for Chandler Morris? Chandler Morris had a phenomenal season for the Mean Green last year, and when you look at what they're bringing in, Poffenbarger didn't work out at Miami. The former Albany transfer went to Miami before Cam Ward decided to not go pro and go to the Hurricanes, and then obviously his job was taken over from there. So now he comes to North Texas, and this is a system that should fit his arm talent well, and they'll have new players at wide receiver. You lose a guy like DT Sheffield, that's going to hurt through the transfer portal. It'll be interesting to see what he can do in this offense. I think that Eric Morris has a good idea of how to put him in successful positions. But again, we'll see what that looks like. Again, this is a team that I think has some good talent, that has plenty of experience, a sleeper team, if you will, in this conference. And like I said, with it being wide open, there's really no reason why North Texas couldn't find a way to sneak into that conversation for the AAC championship. We'll see. Some things have to go right. Again, there are plenty of other questions. Rice is up next. Can Scott Abel right the ship? There really are some big questions with Rice. Winning football games is going to be the biggest question. Can you win at this program? And again, in this conference, you should be able to, but it's hard with some of the restrictions you have. They haven't had a winning season since 2014. Their best season in that stretch was a 6-7 season. You lose talent like EJ Warner and Dean Connor. That's definitely going to make things more difficult offensively. But again, this is a team that I think flies under the radar because of their struggles, because of some of those restrictions. People don't necessarily think they're going to be a contender, and I don't think Rice thinks they're going to be a contender at any point, but they're definitely looking at a bowl game. It's just a matter of, can you get the right guy in place, and can he identify the talent to come in and be the right fit for what Rice is looking to do to make that happen. Temple is up next, and the biggest question I have for this is this a sleeper team? Casey Keeler comes in from Sam Houston, and he is someone who has a ton of success. He has the ability to turn teams into a winner, and Temple is definitely starving for some of that success. He's a good coach. Obviously, he had success at Sam Houston, big reason why he got this job. When you look at Temple, though, 13-42 since 2019. Keeler, as a head coach, is 271, 112, and 1. So a proven winner who is looking to bring some of that success to Temple. Brings in some talent from the transfer portal to help with that. We'll see what happens with that. It might take a little bit of time, but this is a team that I think with the right mindset has the ability to recruit well, has the ability to win football games, but it's going to be down to the confidence they have. And I think Keeler gives them a little bit more of that they maybe didn't have in the past. Tulane is going to be an interesting team because I don't know if there are many teams that lose more than the Tulane Green Wave. When you look at what John Summerall has to do, he has to replace QB1, RB1, his top tight end, some talent on the offensive line. He loses a ton in the front seven on the defensive side of the ball. Caleb Ransaw just had a huge week at the NFL Combine. Easy to see why he came with Summerall from Troy. And you look at what this team has to replace, it is not going to be easy. I think losing guys like that brings up the question of, can the transfers keep them competitive? Summerall did a good job of bringing in talent from the transfer portal. You brought in 3 quarterbacks to compete for the starting job, but is that going to be enough to compete and keep them where they are? This team competed for a conference championship last year, and that wasn't unexpected. But this is a team that loses a ton of talent, and now you have to question it. Are they able to do that again, or is this going to be a year where making a bowl game is the goal and they're just happy with anything above that? That'll be a big question. If there's a guy you don't doubt, it's John Summerall. But again, losing the amount of talent that they did is really going to make things difficult. But this is a guy that's taken in stride. He has done a couple of interviews now that have just made me, or given more respect to him from me, to what he is looking as a mindset for his team. Yes, the transfer portal sometimes sucks in terms of you lose talent like a Darian Mensah, Mekhi Hughes. Those are guys that you don't want to lose, but it's the nature of the game. You can complain about it all you want, but John Summerall is basically practicing what he preaches, which is just, you take it in stride and you find ways to be successful. So we'll see what happens with this team. Maybe a little bit of a step back, but this is still going to be a tough team nonetheless. Tulsa is up next, and kind of similar to some of these other schools, a new coaching staff comes into place, and the question is going to be, is the new coaching staff the answer? We've had a couple of coaches come in, and you thought maybe this was it. You have a guy who has a good idea of what he wants to do. You bring in certain coordinators that have really good minds in terms of offensive, defensive, and it just hasn't worked. It's just been a struggle year in and year out, and we'll see if the new coaching staff can figure out how to get this team where they need to be. A 1 winning season since 2016. Trey Lamb has a lot of work to do coming in from Eastern Tennessee. We'll see what the quarterback position looks like. Kirk Francis is the only quarterback on the roster so far that has taken meaningful snaps in 2024, so that's going to be a big question. There's there's questions everywhere. Tulsa just has so many questions on both sides of the ball, and you're hoping that this is a team that can get back to where it once was. This is a team that was a really fun team to watch offensively, even when they were having maybe not the best year offensively or defensively. The other side of the ball seemed to step up, and the last couple of years it's just been neither of those. So we'll see what happens with that team. If Trey Lamb can find ways to get guys to play a certain way, then this is a really fun team to watch in 2025. UAB, kind of the same thing. Somehow Trent Dilfer has a job still, and maybe it was too early to pull the plug on that, but is this the end of the road for him? Is this going to be his final season with the Blazers? That's a big question if you're UAB. 7-17 in his 2 seasons. Not exactly what you were hoping for a guy that talked a big game coming into it. And seasons of firing, how does he have a job still? Don't really know. You lose a ton of transfers if you're UAB. You brought in some transfers that maybe replace that talent, but you lost a ton of players in the transfer portal. So this is not, the signs aren't there definitely for a winning season, that's for sure. But we'll see what happens. If this is a tough start, it could very well be. The schedule is not going to be easy. They have to play Tennessee, Memphis, USF, Army, and Navy right there out the bat. Those are 5 losable games for sure. Those are games that are going to be difficult, especially with what UAB has had in the past. So we'll see if they are able to navigate that storm, but it's not looking good so far. Maybe it's the end of the road, or maybe Dilfer surprises us. We'll see. USF is in a very interesting spot because the question is who's the quarterback. And I think coming into last year, you knew that Byron Brown was going to be the guy. You also brought in Bryce Archie from the transfer portal, but I think this is going to be a big question. This is a quarterback competition, and we'll see if both of them stay after spring practices. There's still an opportunity for guys to leave, and we'll see if one of them leaves after this. We'll see. Bryce Archie had an interesting year last year, threw for over 1,900 yards, 9 touchdowns, and 10 interceptions. Also rushed for 129 yards and 2 touchdowns in 12 games. Brown had only 836 yards and 2 touchdowns, rushed for 269 and 3 touchdowns. That was in 6 games, though. So we'll see if he is back to full strength, if he is back to being an actual competitor in the quarterback position. I think that he still has a ton of talent, has a really good frame, and I think that honestly one of them is going to end up in the portal. Whoever is ahead towards the end of it, we'll see what the coaching staff can do to keep both of them intrigued, but this could be a situation where you see one of them end up in the portal for sure. UTSA is up last, and obviously we went alphabetical here. Can the passing attack take a step? I think you saw some really exciting things from Owen McCown last year. 25 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, over 3,400 yards passing, returns quite a bit of talent at wide receiver. So this is the guy who could have a big season. Jeff Traylor has done a really good job of just keeping his team competitive, and UTSA could be one of those sleeper teams again that could make it to the AAC championship if everything goes right. McCown is going to be a big reason for that one way or another. So we'll see what happens. This is a conference that's really exciting. I think that there's plenty of questions for each team, but there's also plenty of excitement for each team. We'll take a look. What is your biggest question for each of these teams, or your favorite team? What do you think is going to happen with this year, and what are you most excited for the AAC in 2025?